The 266th Pope Francis. In his youth, he was a fan of rock music. In Puritan England in the 19th century, everything erotic was avoided. Even the legs of pianos were covered with cloths to prevent indecent thoughts. Previously unknown photo of Osama bin Laden at Oxford in 1971, about 14 years old at the time. Mass strike of African Americans and equality supporters, Tennessee, 1968. The first known use of biological weapons, the siege of Kaffa in the 14th century. The attacking Tatars catapulted plague-infected corpses into the city, causing an epidemic. It is believed this contributed to the spread of the Black Death in Europe. Edward Bloch, a Jewish doctor and personal physician to Adolf Hitler. He was under Hitler's personal protection, who called him a noble Jew. Louise Bundy, mother of serial killer Ted Bundy, talks to him on the phone minutes before his execution. "You will always be my precious son." A mother is always a mother. People read the news about Kennedy's assassination. New York, 1963. Adolf and Rudolf Dassler, brothers, founders of Puma and Adidas, they hated each other so much that they didn't speak until the end of their lives. The most fraudulent election in history took place in Liberia in 1927. Charles King received 243,000 votes despite there being only 15,000 registered voters. This rare 1917 photo shows one of the most unusual prototypes of individual protection during World War I. This invention belongs to Dr. Guy Brewster, an enthusiast in defense technology who dreamed of creating a light and effective armor for infantrymen, but his dream never came true. A legendary moment in archaeology. The intact 3,000-year-old seal on the doorway of Tutankhamun's tomb just before it was unsealed in 1923. Children in New Year's costumes. On the right, a boy in the costume of a black person with a ribbon saying, "Independence for Africa." A friendly gift, the bugging device hidden in the Great Seal. Thanks to this device, the USSR secretly eavesdropped on the United States for many years, 1945. A captured moth, New York, 1986. In 1971, civil rights activist Ann Atwater was forced to work with KKK leader Ellis. Later, Ellis renounced the Klan, tore up his card, and dedicated the rest of his life to fighting for equality. Winston Churchill talks on the first portable radio, Fort Jackson, 1942. A Turkish official taunts starving Armenian children with bread, the Armenian Genocide, 1915. Fashion for boldly protruding female breasts in the 1940s. A 1951 photograph from the Korean War shows Chinese soldiers kneeling before Korean troops and pleading for mercy. Hattie McDaniel became the first black actress to win an Oscar in 1940. A scandal arose at the ceremony due to racial segregation, and the actress had to sit separately. This is why sadness is on her face. A little girl from the Philippines displayed at the Coney Island Zoo with animals, 1914. She was placed among monkeys and lizards tied with ropes, and visitors threw peanuts at her. The Daily Life of a Theatrical Agent, 1950s. King George inspects the day's trophies. Tigers hunted during his visit to India, 1911. A pigeon with a miniature camera for aerial shots, 1907. How the Victorian corset damages the ribs, 1882. Cleaning a church, Leipzig, Germany, 1920. Hachiko with his owner, Professor Ueno, 1924. London after a bombing, 1940. Divers, 1940s. A demonstration of an economy-class underground bomb shelter, which could hold 8 to 12 people, USA, 1958. A Syrian girl in a refugee camp in Turkey. Mistaking the camera for a weapon, she raised her hands, 2012. Doctors bow their heads before 11-year-old Liang Yaoyi, who died of brain cancer. Upon learning of his illness, he volunteered to donate his organs to several people, saving their lives. Shortly before his death, he told his mother, "There are so many wonderful people in the world doing good every day. I want to be one of them." The original quadrober? A strange sight from the USA, 1867. The interior design of a train more than 100 years ago. Unlicensed prostitutes caught by the police at the famous fair, Russia, 1900s. Repairing faults on the Graf Zeppelin airship during a flight, 1934. Dancing Man, a photo taken on August 15, 1945 in Sydney, Australia. A man is seen dancing in the street out of joy upon hearing the news that World War II has ended. Jewish women before execution in occupied Latvia, December 1941. An American paratrooper, North Korea, 1950. A man among giant plants on Maui Island, Hawaii, 1924. After a 7-day strike, Woolworth store employees in Detroit celebrate their victory. They managed to raise wages by 20%, reduce working hours to 40 hours a week, and receive overtime pay, 1937. U.S. troops invaded Panama allegedly to protect 35,000 American citizens, but in reality to overthrow the government and regain control of the Panama Canal. The photo shows fighting near the Ministry of Defense of Panama, 1989. Violet Jessup, Queen of Sinking Ships. She survived the Titanic, the Olympic, and the Britannic, all within 5 years. Two brothers from West Virginia who fought on opposite sides of the American Civil War in 1910. A heartbreaking scene near Svalbard, 1947. A polar bear cub clings to its lifeless mother after a hunt. The cub reportedly stayed in this position for a day and a night, crying and refusing to leave her side. The wives of astronauts involved in Apollo 8 hearing their husbands' voices while they were in orbit, 1968. The coffins of 19 peasants are transported on trucks for burial. Pará State, Brazil. In 1996, 1,500 peasants occupied a highway near the village of El Dorado dos Carajás to protest the government's delay in settling their families. By the end of the day, military police with rifles and machine guns surrounded the protesters on both sides of the road and opened fire, killing 19 peasants and wounding 57. A friendly conversation between Soviet and German soldiers in September 1939 after the partition of Poland. Such photographs were never officially published in the USSR. The iceberg photographed the day after the Titanic sank. There is a high probability that it was the cause of the sinking. Cave paintings depicting the daily life of people. Wadi Gerat, Algeria, 2000 BC. A dog bids farewell to its fallen U.S. soldier friend. Afghanistan War, 2004. The execution of counter-revolutionaries. Before the shooting, a sign listing their crimes was hung around their necks. China, 1968. Sea lions are beaten to death with sticks on St. Paul Island, Alaska, 1895. In the town of High Wycombe, every mayor is weighed in the town square. The tradition dates back to 1678. Residents believed that if a mayor gained weight, it meant he was stealing from the treasury and living too lavishly. In case of injury or death from bombing, to identify a young lady's identity, a tattoo artist applied her social security number on one leg and her address on the other. Britain, 1942. Engineer plugging in one of the first computers, 1958. A British soldier at the grave of his friend, Gallipoli, 1915. Prisoners of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp liberated by Soviet and Polish troops, Germany, 1945. Cotton candy, Pittsburgh, 1940s. The arrangement of a gypsy baron's grave, photo from the 2000s. In 2007, the guerrilla Sinkwekwe and several others fell victim to the conflict in Virunga National Park, Africa. As a result, authorities enacted stricter laws to protect the park's remaining guerrilla population. Bicycles designed for riding on railway tracks, Pellston, Michigan, 1910. This is a screw gag, which doctors use to place in a patient's mouth during surgery to prevent them from screaming. Sometimes the patient was also hit on the head with a rubber mallet, and the surgery was performed quickly before they regained consciousness. International Women's Day was born as a day representing women's fight for their rights in a man's world. The first declarations of women's rights appeared in the 18th century. In the 19th century, women gained more rights, but were still considered property of men. By the early 20th century, women were already holding rallies for equality and soon proposed the establishment of a unified International Women's Day. Cyclists, scooter riders, and motorcyclists have been irritating other road users since 1900. New Year in a Soviet psychiatric hospital, 1988. A slave in restraints designed to prevent escape. The collar prevented the slave from squeezing through narrow openings, such as a window. Racist residents beat and expel black journalist Alex Wilson from their town, Little Rock, Arkansas, 1957. A woman in an elegant dress on a dusty street in the Wild West is concealed behind a mask protecting her from the sun and wind. In an era when a tan was associated with manual labor and aristocratic paleness was the ideal, such accessories were considered a necessity. The Starving Winter of 1944, a tragedy for the Dutch people. How to touch a Frau for free and kiss her on the lips. All you had to do was become a Berlin policeman in 1946 and take first aid courses. Today we practice on plastic mannequins, but back then, volunteers played that role. Germany. Police removed bodies from the Amityville house. In 1974, Ronald Defy killed his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters. This story later became the basis for many horror books and films. Cormorant fishing is an ancient tradition in Asia. A ring is placed on the bird's neck to prevent it from swallowing large fish. The cormorant brings the large catch to the owner, who takes it and rewards the bird with a small fish. German automobile with a spring steel tire used due to the rubber shortage during World War I, 1917. Teeth sharpening among Indonesian tribes, 1938. On October 15, 1917, Mata Hari, a dancer of Oriental dances and the most romanticized spy of the 20th century, was executed for espionage on behalf of Germany. Mata Hari asked not to have her hands tied and no blindfold placed on her eyes. She blew a kiss to the executioners and said, "I am ready, gentlemen." Victorious British soldiers of the 137th Staffordshire Brigade of the 46th Division resting after the Battle of St. Quentin Canal, northern France, September 29, 1918. A sleep holder. In 1949, Dr. Ego Seeger from Vienna invented this device for railway travel. A German pilot jumps from a burning plane. Parachutes did not exist at the time. World War I, 1915. Two girls on the streets of West Germany talk to their grandparents through a window in a house in the East Zone, separated by a barbed wire barricade, August 14, 1961. Peaky Blinders, members of a gang that terrorized Birmingham, 1903. Sailors of the battleship George V received their daily rum ration, 1910s. An orphan, taken in by an aviation squadron, writes messages on bombs, "For my mom, for my dad." A live child is found in Chernobyl after the explosion of the nuclear power plant, 1986, Ukraine. Francesco Lentini, a man with a rare developmental anomaly from the island of Sicily. He was born in 1889 with 3 legs and 2 sexual organs, earning his living by working in a circus. Children take cover in an underground shelter to escape the explosions. Spain, 1938. Coin-operated shaving machine, USA, 1940. Ladies invite their suitors to the white dance, century-old etiquette, 1900. Not long ago, believing in their superiority, exclusivity, special path, and invincibility, the Germans plant vegetables in front of the Reichstag building in hungry, war-torn Berlin, 1946. Baker Daniil Kutanin died of dystrophy in besieged Leningrad. He did not take a single crumb of bread despite thousands of loaves passing through his hands. Mona Lisa being retrieved from a wartime hiding place, 1945. The painting was saved from Nazi looting. Belt made from human nipples, one of the horrific artifacts belonging to serial killer and necrophile Ed Gein. Gas chamber for horses, Germany, 1942. Used to treat skin diseases, but it looked terrifying. Ham the chimpanzee returns to Earth after a spaceflight, USA, 1961. 1753, Russian physicist Georg Wilhelm Richtmann was killed testing atmospheric electricity. He accidentally created ball lightning that struck his forehead. A student strike, London, 1972. 10,000 London students marched against tasteless lunches, corporal punishment, and uniforms. Although the protests were suppressed and the ringleaders punished, corporal punishment was soon banned. However, uniforms remain mandatory in more than 90% of schools to this day. Woman demanding the right to vote arrested, 1914. Stockbroker at the end of Black Monday, Toronto, 1987. A coffin in a tree in the taiga, USSR, 1927. Air burial is one of the oldest religious funeral rites. Sparked a reaction. Whether good or bad, I'd love to read your comments below. Get ready for the next installment very soon. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss out. Catch you later.